Modern real estate practice, page 71. Wording with right of survivorship makes the meaning explicit. Use of a single instrument necessarily means that the right of ownership is conveyed to all of the joint owners at the same time. Terminating a joint tenancy. A joint tenancy is destroyed when any one of the four unities of joint tenancy is terminated. Unless prohibited by state law, joint tenants are free to convey their individual interests in the jointly held property, but doing so destroys the unities of time and title as to that interest. This means that the new owner cannot be a joint tenant, but instead is a tenant in common. If there were only two joint tenants to begin with, the joint tenancy is terminated. If the joint tenancy had more than two owners to begin with, and one of them conveys that interest, there will still be a joint tenancy, but only as to the interests held by the remaining joint tenants. The new owner is a tenant in common. In practice, sisters A, B, and C hold title to their family home as joint tenants. Sister A conveys her interests to her son, D. D then owns an undivided 1/3 interest in the property as a tenant in common with B and C, who continue to own their undivided 2/3 interest as joint tenants. See Figure 5.3. The difference in the form of ownership means that unless B and C also convey their separate interests on the death of either B or C, the surviving sister will be a tenant in common with D, but with 2/3 interests to D's 1/3 interests. On the death of the last sister, the sister's share of the TIC, or tenancy in common, will transfer by will or as provided by statute. Unless D is the person to whom the ownership is transferred, D will be a tenant in common with the new owner, but D will still have only a 1/3 interest in the property. Figure 5.3, combination of tenancies. A, B, and C are joint tenants. A conveys her interest to D. D becomes a tenant in common with B and C as joint tenants. Termination of a co-ownership by partition suit. Partition is a legal way to dissolve the relationship between co-owners of real estate when the parties do not voluntarily agree to its termination. If the court determines that the property cannot be divided physically into separate parcels without destroying its value, the court will order the real estate sold. The proceeds of the sale will then be divided among the co-owners according to their fractional interests.